and welcome to this episode of the Diversifying Data podcast. My name's Aleesha Nagra, and on this edition we're going to be talking about South Asian Heritage Month. So I'm super excited to be here with Shijo and Anshuman to talk about our experiences of being of Indian descent in modern day Britain. So should we introduce ourselves and kind of talk about our story of how we got here today?
Yeah, absolutely. I can go first. Yeah, so I'm Anshuman, or Anshu, or Ansh for short. I was born in India in a state called Bihar, which is quite small, small rural state. And when I was 6 months old, my family relocated to the UK. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely a gift sometimes, and it's definitely something that has caused problems, or something I interpreted as problems growing up. But yeah, now I'm proud to be from two places, so have two homes basically on the planet. I think it's really is a blessing. Yeah.
I'm Shijo. I was born in Kerala, and I moved here when I was around 6 or 7. And I grew up in a rural part of Kerala. Grew up on a farm surrounded by chickens and cows and everything. And my mum had a job as a nurse in the UK, and then she moved our family up here. And I loved living in India, and I really disliked moving. I actually had a hunger strike on the day that I was moving, and my dad had to pick me up from the hospital on the day of moving, and we moved here. Yeah.
That's quite severe.
Yeah, no.
My grandparents moved here in the 60s, so my parents were born here and then I was born here too, so second generation immigrants. So I guess maybe some of my experiences will be different to your guys, which will be interesting.
Yeah.
So you might be too young to remember, but what did it feel like coming from rural India to then moving to the UK?
Yeah, I loved living in rural India. I did a lot of stuff that kids here wouldn't be able to do. I played with the chickens. I went and went into the forest to roam, and I played with sticks and threw rocks and made huts and stuff. I guess some people living in the country would have done that, but that was very big culture shock to where I came from, which is in Essex, Southend. And there it was more concrete and more British, I would say.
So why do we think South Asian Heritage Month is important? I think it's quite a newly recognised thing. Let's talk about for us why it's so important to have this as a recognised month.
Yeah, totally. So I think I found out about it last year when I heard about it through a friend, and she was also celebrating it in her workplace, and she was giving her colleagues a lesson in Hindi. And I just thought that's so amazing, just because. Say if I had come to this company more recently from India, just walking into an environment where people are trying to learn Hindi or learning about cultural celebrations like Diwali, or what it means to be a person of Southeast Asian or South Asian heritage. It's all about diversity. You want to make everyone at the company feel welcome, and everyone just in general feel welcome.
I think it's just about being seen as well.
Yeah.
I think that something that if you're not from an ethnic minority background, you can't appreciate is just how much it means to be seen, either to be recognized as a race, or to see representation in the media, to see good representations of. And I know we're not a diverse representation of South Asia because we're all from India, but even seeing characters on TV, in Bridgerton, when it wasn't, it was not a stereotyped representation of an Indian.
Yeah.
It was actually a powerful, sexually liberated, strong Indian woman. I think it's just that element of recognition that's so important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Similar thing. When I saw Never Have I Ever, that was during COVID, and I was full with my friends, and I didn't feel that.
I loved Never Have I Ever.
It was so good. I saw them eat dosha and stuff for breakfast. I'm that's what I did, and I was so excited and pumped for that. But I think it's good to see and hear voices and people's stories, because it's when you're a privileged position, when you see everyone that looks like you, it's hard for you to realize that it's important for people to see good representation in the media. When I see someone or see stories of people who are successful, it kind of relates to me a little bit more, and I don't know why that is, but it does, and that I think that's really useful to hear stories and different voices being shown.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah, because you see yourself in that position.
Yeah, exactly.
Grown up. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I have a weird fact about Spider-Man is the most like rated superhero of all time, and it's because there's no person under it. It's a mask, so all children relate to Spider-Man individually. So that's the most popular like superhero.
That makes sense.
in the world.
Spider-Man was my favorite growing up
Yeah,
as well.
mine too.
Even in the new movie, like they have a sort of Indian-based Spider-Man, which I thought was like
thought
a
that
really
was
nice
dope.
search.
Yeah.
So did you ever experience growing up, I know this was the case for me, I know before we started the podcast you were talking about your first packed lunch when you came to the UK and having like roti and chicken curry and then feeling a bit embarrassed about it, or maybe not feeling embarrassed about it until people turned
pointed
around.
it out. Yeah. So I remember eating with my hands, and like that's a normal thing for me when I came back back home in India. When I came here and I did that, and people literally came and was like, that smells weird, that's like, what are you doing? And like that just made me feel so alien and isolated. And I understand that they were kids, they were like 6 or 7, and kids are mean, like they don't understand anything better. And that really that had an impact on me, and I had like school meals for the rest of my like primary school and secondary school as a result of that. And I told my mum never to like give me packed lunch that is like Indian again, because it's just like weird, right?
I think when you're younger, anything that sets you apart, you just want to conceal. I know I felt that, like if I was ever dressed up to go to an Indian function, walking from my house to my car, I would run, or I'd put a coat over me because I wouldn't want anyone from my school to walk past and see me in Indian dress. Whereas now it's something I'd be proud of. It'd be all over my Instagram. But I think when you're younger, these things that set you apart, you are just so terrified for anyone to see. And then when you go out of that and your friends actually start to recognize and like those things about you, and you realize you don't have to be afraid, it's such a liberating and relieving moment, because you don't feel it's actually exhausting having to hide parts of yourself to try and fit in. And it got to a point where, you know, people, what you're doing every weekend, people would be going out to like parties or whatever. I'd have another wedding. I'd be at another wedding. I'd be at another family function. I've got another wedding. And people would stop understanding and be like, are you just making up excuses? How many weddings can you have to go to?
It's like you don't want to be friends with them.
Yeah.
You know, I totally get that. Yeah, I mean, growing up like with 2 older sisters as well, because there was a bit more of an age gap for when they moved to the UK, so Hindi was their first language, but English was mine growing up in this country. So I kind of saw, like, secondhand through their experiences what to do and what not to do, and obviously everything just changes with time. But I think I kind of had the mentality, I'm just going to sort of keep my home life very separate to my friends or my school or whatever, just because, and I would get exhausted because I was hiding like that part of my life to my friends, just because it's embarrassing. We didn't have stuff like Southeast Asian Heritage Month back then. It's kind of like no one really talked about my race, which is great to a certain extent, but sometimes if you don't even address someone's background, you're not really acknowledging their experience.
This is so true. I hear a lot of people saying like, you're equal, we're all equal, and it's just like, why you're not different from mine, you're not different, right? We're all equal. And I'm like, that's cool, and that's a really good attitude, but the thing is, like, we're equal but different. Like, we all have differences, and those differences should be celebrated, right?
Like equity rather than equality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you grow up trying so hard to fit in that you don't realise when everyone leaves school or university, everyone's trying their best to stand out. And I think like I had a similar like coming of age moment when I got to uni. I was like, because I grew up in such a sort of not so diverse area of the UK, like up in the northeast, I didn't really see that many other people outside of my family that, you know, were from the same background as me, or same ethnicity or same religion or whatever. But when I got to a uni in a place that was much more diverse, and I see all these people that like sort of look like me, talk my language, I'm just like, wait, what's going on here? Like, I'd be like, all right, cool, I'll just step right into it then. Yeah, it's nice.
So if you feel comfortable sharing, what are the main kind of misconceptions or bias you felt that you experienced growing up?
I'd say not misconceptions or biases. It's just like a kind of insecurity similar to what you had of like my culture and my cultural identity being accepted by people. I just wouldn't talk about things that were very Indian to my friends, and which I realized is a very bad thing to do. I educate my friends constantly on what is Indian now, because it's because as they know certain things from me, and then they will be able to like better understand and accept other people with differences, because they're like, oh, my friend told me this is a thing that you guys do, this and have open and more in-depth conversations to understand that nuanced part of that culture. Whereas like when I was younger, I just like shut my like similar to you, I just shut my Indian part off. But I was very lucky. I had a lot of Indian friends, and that really gave me solidarity. Like when we go to Indian functions, we would hang out with the Indian friends, and like I had a sense of identity from that, and that was because my where place I was in had a lot of like Asian community, and we had a lot of functions and stuff like that. But even at the functions, I remember the kids would really like not speak Malayalam or like speak English, and like be a little bit embarrassed of like being dressed different, right? I don't know. But it is interesting as you grow up, you realize your differences is what makes you unique.
Exactly,
and people are craving these differences.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, like, in the context of work, like, absolutely, you just hit the nail on the head. People need that diversity, because if you have sort of a diverse workforce, you can connect to a diversity of clients, customers, or whatever. For me personally, like, I think as times have changed, I've become more aware of, what microaggressions even are, or like biases. And then it's sort of when I'm reflecting, like, I'm thinking like something that happened like 10 years ago, like, wait,
I feel
wait,
the
you
same.
shouldn't have said that to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes it's my own friends, it's teachers, or it's just like whatever. Like, as a kid, you just think everything's normal. Like, if someone's treating you badly, as a kid, you don't really know anything. Like, you're just going to think, oh, this is just how I should be treated. But yeah, I think like more recently, like, the push for diversity and sort of inclusion has made me realize, like, actually could probably educate like some people better around me.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I let a lot slide because I thought it was normal or okay. But I think this is, as society's evolved and we've become more aware of microaggressions and understanding a little bit more what you can and can't say, I look back and think, oh, like you said, that thing my teacher said to me in year 4 was actually really out of pocket. And I was telling you guys as well before, part of like RE in year 5, I think, they put on Bend It Like Beckham. And that was like, here you go. Now you know about Indian culture. You've watched Bend It Like Beckham. I wanted to crawl up into a ball and die. Like, it's funny, and I think if you're of Indian descent, it speaks to a lot of the stereotypes and some things that we can relate to. But I came out of that, and people thought I was going to get an arranged marriage. That's how I dressed. That's how my mum spoke. I ate curry 24/7, and I was just mortified. And I think that, and I think there are so many better representations now. Like you talk about Never Have I Ever. I think that is a great representation of what it's like to be an Indian teenager in today's society.
This is true. I think she's an awful human being, to be honest. That's my personal opinion.
Oh, yeah. But I think we can all speak to elements of...
No, I see the elements of this. No, I know we're all teenagers who are growing and stuff like that. No.
But there are so many things growing up Asian, I think, are just amazing. I think that growing up in an Asian family and the family being the epicenter of your life and how big our families are is just amazing. I have a lot of friends who can't understand the fact that I've got so many cousins that I'm so close to. I think that family environment and the emphasis on family is just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think like, again, like, you don't even realize it when you're growing up, but until later on in life, then you realize, actually, I'm so glad that this is such a unique and strong position that's in my life, that everything's just about the family, like extended family, your cousins, your mum, your dad, whatever. And yeah, growing up, again, you just kind of assume everyone else has the same things going on, but it's like really not like that. And like, yeah, sometimes they don't even talk to like their cousins or whatever, or they don't have any. It's just something that's always been a support system in my life, so I'm just so grateful for that. And yeah, like really grateful for that part of our culture.
I think like there is a lot of commonality between South Asian like culture, and it's just like that communal feeling of like family and relating very close to that is an amazing thing to be celebrated. I think that's really good to have that support system within people's lives as well.
So for companies, I mean, I know that, so we're here and we're doing this podcast. What other things do you think are important for companies to make South Asian people and ethnic minorities in general feel more included? I know here at Kubrick we've got some employee resource groups being set up, like we've got the Women's Network and LGBT Kubrick Plus, and I'm sure more will evolve. But, you know, I've thought about it a lot this month. What other things do you think organisations should be doing, and how much responsibility do you think organisations should have in doing that?
I think it's really like about empowering people to hear their voices. Like we said earlier, I think it's about being seen, right? Recognizing people's differences, allowing people to say their story, like similar to what we're doing here, and just normalizing the fact that people are different. And like you said earlier, it's just like diversity is amazing. It's just you don't want people to look at the same problem and have the same outcome, right? You don't want a person to be like, that's the way to solve that problem. Someone else would be like, that's a different way to solve that problem, and a different way. And all of this comes from like cultural nuances on how you look at certain things, how you problem solve, and all these kind of things is so useful for a company. All you can do as a company is try not to make an amalgamated kind of like I am a worker kind of robot kind of thing, but rather than like empower your workforce to be their true selves and allow the collective intelligence of the company to increase, because that's what we're all here for, right? Yeah,
totally. Yeah, and just to add to that, as I mentioned earlier, so my friend like is really passionate, about celebrating, our cultural backgrounds. So yeah, I know it's just fun. I feel like if you had like an open sign-up sheet of if you know any languages, like try teaching a class, I think people would sign up for that. And you get to learn, like through learning language, you learn a lot about the culture and like the people teaching you at least. Yeah, I think there's like the bigger picture stuff on hiring, who you sort of promote through a company. Obviously, that's a version of being seen, being represented within a company. So I think obviously importance should be paid to that. I think as well as that, companies can sort of look into where they invest in their money, where they invest in their resources, how many of them come from like certain areas of the world, and they can sort of diversify their investment portfolio in that sense as well. But when it comes to more of the day-to-day, like, what you guys have said, just allowing people to be themselves, like, celebrate their sort of religious festivals, share it with the rest of the workforce. I think it's all about building that sense of community. Yeah.
We're really lucky, I think, to have a head of DEI and for it to be such a prominent thing here at Kubrick. We've got the multi-faith prayer room, and I feel like things are celebrated well here. Things like when Diwali come around, there's information put up on Workplace about it, things like that. And I think small things like that just make such a big difference. Yeah. There are also, I was thinking about this on the train here, how many things in modern Britain come from India that a lot of people might not know about. What we were talking earlier about tea. Yeah. That's Indian, Yeah. It's a very British thing. British people are known for drinking tea. Yeah. That came from India. And it's become so popular now to oil your hair. Yeah. I'm seeing all over TikTok, rosemary oil, etc., etc. And that is something that has been like a ritualistic, really sacred family experience in India for generations. Your grandma oiling your hair. Yeah. And it's nice to see those things come into Britain now and to be more widespread. But I feel like it's a hard balance on how I feel about things that come from India but aren't recognised as coming from India.
Yeah, totally.
I find it super weird. It's just like it's a cultural appropriation kind of that word. It's just like you want to see the things that other people are doing well, but it's about paying homage to that, right? You can't basically be like, I invented this, right? When there's like you can't be the sole creator of this. Guys, I found this new thing, right? You can be like, this was used ages ago in this kind of like context, in a different context, and it can mean so many different things to another person, right? And you actually stripping that and devoiding that of that value can actually be like, oh man, this is what it meant to me. That's like kind of misrepresenting like what it fully meant, right?
Yeah, totally.
But it's hard I see it from the other point of view. It's hard for them to like look and see that like they found something cool online and they're like, oh man, this is amazing.
It's maybe not even the responsibility of the consumers then. It's more about the way that they're marketed.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's so true. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you see it with a lot of products, but even, I think we mentioned it earlier, sort of, people wearing bindis to festivals. I mean, as an Indian, seeing stuff like that, obviously it is kind of offensive just because they're not celebrating that, in a religious context. They're not understanding the cultural significance behind that.
Yeah. Because the bindi traditionally, it's evolved a bit now, used to be what you would wear if you were a married woman, right?
Exactly.
And it used to be a very important and meaningful thing for Indian women to wear their bindi. And now it's just kind of seen, or it will just be marketed as a face jewel on ASOS or whatever. And you'll see it at every festival you go to across the summer.
Exactly. And so it's just a weird one. I mean, how do you tell someone to stop selling the product? I mean, because obviously they're just going to say, oh, it's just a face jewel. But, I think people, that choose to wear them, like, obviously, like, that's your decision, but it would be nice if everyone sort of like took a deeper look at what they're sharing online, what they're buying, what they're using, and just sort of just having an appreciation of where things come from. Because otherwise, cultures just sort of get rubbed away.
And also, it's a trend. It's going to come and go. Whereas for where it came from, it will be a consistently important thing.
I think one of the points is like is like cultural like amalgamation. It's like mixture of culture. If like but I would feel very different if that bindi thing was created by like some Indians and they wanted to like spread the word and make that like a new trend, right? Like, or like I want to like pay part of my culture and I want to make it into a new way because I'm both like a mix of like Indian and British or like whatever mix you are, right?
So and I guess it's the delivery. If that was a group of Indian people and they were trying to communicate the meaning to it but make it more widespread and kind of like you said, an amalgamation of East meets West culture, that's different to a celebrity wearing it and then boohoo jumping on the trend and then like copy and pasting it and mass selling it the next day, I guess. Another thing I find, and again this is a balance that I struggle with, I'd be interested to see what you guys think, is I want to be recognised for my ethnicity, but I don't want it to define me. And I don't want, if I say to someone I'm Indian, for the first thing to come out their mouth to be like, I love curry,
I've had that conversation
are you from India?
So
Can you make curry? I love curry.
And that's great that you do, but a lot of the times that I realised is a lot of people told me curries I had no idea of. Like traditional British curry was invented in the UK. Like
I think
it was
chicken tikka is Scottish, right?
It is Scottish, right?
Yeah,
so like people came up to me and it's like, oh, chicken tikka is amazing. I'm like, bro, I don't know what that is, right?
Like, try and find that on a menu in India.
Exactly. But like even in India, like I don't know so many different cultures of India. Like I am ignorant so much of
India's
different
massive,
states, right?
It's
It's like kind of saying you speak African or like you speak Indian or something like that. It's just like so many different things that you just have to like take it in case by case.
I think growing up as a kid, once I sort of realised like, people need a bit of like education and like obviously it's going to be me delivering it, otherwise no one's going to deliver that information on my behalf when I'm having those conversations. It's just so repetitive, like, oh, you speak Indian? I'm like, no, there's like 200 languages in India.
Say something in Indian then would be another one. Oh, go on, say something then in Indian.
It's just like, it's not nice putting people on the spot, but constantly growing up, I think that's walking that line of, okay, I want to show myself, but I also don't want this to define me. I think that's a lot of where, for me personally, like, I was trying to hide where I come from or not really talk about it, just because that's sort of like sometimes easier when you're a kid, until you have that confidence to be like, this is who I am, this is where I come from. But aside from that, there are all these other things that make me who I am. I think me as a person in general, I never want to be put into one box just because I think we're all like multifaceted people. Like,
I feel that as well. When you don't want to like put someone in a box. It's easy for you as a person to be like, this is this person, this is their cultural identity, and I kind of like put labels on people, right? But in reality, people are very different, right? Like I can go up to a person and be like, you're from here or something like that, and I can be completely wrong, right? So it's just like taking a little bit more care and effort when you communicate with people to be like, oh, nice. This is so. What do you like? I don't know. Being it a more curious kind of way and only pushing if people want to. Because, like you said, some people are not comfortable sharing these kind of things. Some people are like sometimes in a mood, and I'm like, I want to educate someone. Like I want to teach them about my culture. Sometimes I'm like, bro, I'm dead. Like
it's exhausting for the onus to have to be on us as well. I think there are still, for South Asians who have moved to the UK, there's a long way to go in some senses. I don't know if you find this. I met a girl from school who'd come over from India, and I thought, oh, poor child, I'll take her under my wing.
That's sweet.
And I learnt, I thought, oh, she's from India, kind of, how will she know how to settle in here? Being from a big city in India, I felt she was a lot more progressive and had been raised in a very different way to me.
Yeah.
I think wrongly, I thought, well, my family have been here for generations, so I will show you the way.
Yeah.
But big cities in India are modernising at a much quicker rate than the people that have moved here have, because I think in a lot of ways we're still stuck in the mentality and belief of our grandparents or parents from whenever they moved over here, and things haven't moved on. But I think for those that are still in India, they're progressing and modernising much faster, and there's still a lot of problematic stuff here. Like, I don't know if you ever got told by family when you go on holiday, stay out of the sun because you'll get too dark. And a lot of these things that I think they link back to colonisation and the ideals of what beauty were that kind of came from the West. But I think being lighter skinned is still seen as being favourable. And I think that's something that we're still trying to unlearn. And then, a lot of our views, I think, still on things like mental health and sexuality, they still have a long way to come as well.
Definitely. It's sort of just legacy biases and prejudices from generations above us. Like, they're just passed down. We learn it without meaning to. We absorb it and sort of internalize that stuff, and then sometimes we don't even realize if we share those beliefs or not. But that's why it's really important to talk about it.
This is super close to me as well, because I feel like when parents come here, I can give an example specifically of my mum. Her mindset kind of stuck. This was what India was, right? And that mindset is stuck 10, 20 years ago, or 10 years ago from there. And that's how she believed India is. Then I speak to some people from that area. They're so involved, but my mum is still holding on to the beliefs because she wants to hold on to her identity, and I empathize with that, right? That's her roots, right? For her, it's I will be too British if I change. I want to be Indian. But when you're in India, it's an evolving field,
we mentioned it before we started. The world's kind of getting smaller. The internet's just completely changed everything. It's a reason why a lot of modernization is happening so rapidly across the world, across cities, across generations. So, I think, I don't know, obviously I'm not too old yet, but I think everyone sort of goes through that at some point in their life where they're like, oh, the place where I come from is changing. And you kind of question your identity at that point.
It's really hard, I think, I don't know if you watch any Bollywood films, but Bollywood has changed so much now, I think, to try and keep up with the demand for more kind of westernization, and that makes me quite sad. Because it's not so much about I think before, Bollywood would be where you would look to see what was in style. But now the actresses aren't even wearing Indian dress anymore, it's also Western. So it's a really hard struggle that I have in my daily life of how much I want to kind of hold on to both. And then I see India modernizing and I think good for India. But then sometimes I see India modernizing and I think, oh, well, don't do that because you're changing and you're not what you used to be. And it's this amalgamation of culture and it's becoming more westernized, and I don't know, I think it can be quite a difficult thing to get your head around.
It's good. Because the place you're from and what your idea of it is changing, I don't know. People kind of make the place, and it's I don't know. Holding on to tradition sometimes is useful. It's it gives you an identity. I think that's a thing that people have in common with South Asian culture. They have a lot of traditions that define them, and those traditions. Because I kind of want to pass some of the traditions that I had to my children, because I think that was cool. Even if I hated it when I was growing up, I had to do the stuff.
What's an example?
What's an example? Oh no, I have examples that come to my head.
What are you going to do to your poor child?
I'm trying to filter out which I want to say or not. Traditions that I hated, my mum would make me dance, right? I did a lot of Bollywood dance, right? And I hated it when I was 8 or 9, going to Bollywood lessons and dancing and wearing weird get-ups, and I was like, oh my god, I hate it. Progressively as I got older, I realized how cool that is. I can dance a little bit now, and I I feel more confident because I went on stage and danced in front of people and stuff like that. But I hated having to do that. My mum forced me at every function. It's you gotta dance. I was like, Mum, no, I want to study. I was trying to find ways that she would understand me not to dance. So I was like, I need to study. I've got an exam, and exams are super important.
So are you grateful that your mum forced you to dance?
Yeah, I am grateful for that.
No,
I don't know
that's
if
good.
I force my children to do that, but like there's some of the traditions like that. That'd be good.
Yeah. Or even like expose them to, this is what dancing used to look like back in my day.
I think just exposing them to your dancing.
Yeah.
That might be enough.
I think it is on YouTube somewhere. My dad has a YouTube channel.
Oh wow, amazing.
So talking a bit about Asian contribution to modern day Britain, you were talking about, you had a stat about how many Indian people fought in World War One and Two, right?
I for this podcast specifically, I was trying to research history and so on. And the whole month, I think it is useful for people to learn and research history themselves, for them to be educated. And I learned that my great granddad and a bunch of his family fought in World War One and Two, right? And I did not know that. Like when the poppies were given out in November, I was like, oh, these British soldiers were the ones that were given all the credit, right? My school is like really, really into Remembrance Day and stuff, but never mentioned any of the Indians and stuff that went to war. And the statistic is ridiculous. Like millions of Indians fought. I think in World War One it said 1.8 million Indians joined and fought, right? And in World War Two, 2.5 million Indians were drafted, just because it was a huge country. But a lot of those people were illiterate, and they didn't have they didn't have as vast journals and stuff that was left behind, and that is part of the reason why they're not spoken. So I'm not saying it's full ignorance and stuff. It's just history is basically what people can find, but this is not taught about in schools. I did not know this.
I think the whole way that imperialism is taught in school, when I looked at it through a different lens, is it's quite shocking. Remember learning about obviously the Vietnam War in school, and then going to Vietnam and going to their museums and learning their side of it. It shows the way that we're taught is skewed. And even with the Windrush generation, we were asked to come here. We came here to fill a lot of valuable roles, and then so quickly, and this isn't just South Asian, this is everyone. They kind of turned around and went, oh, actually, we don't want you anymore. That must have been so tough.
That must have been so tough for the people.
But then to finish on a more positive note, so we were talking about Never Have I Ever and Mindy Kaling. Who else are some examples of Asian people that you think are making a really good contribution in the modern day, and they're showcasing Asian heritage in a much more realistic or popular way?
I don't watch loads of TV or movies or anything, but I'm really into my music. I don't know how much you guys are into music. Recently, there's been a wave, I believe to be started by a guy called Young Singh, and it's UK garage blended in with Punjabi music, and it's so much fun to listen to. And I think back in the noughties, or maybe early late 90s, Punjabi garage was a massive thing in London, and it was massive across the UK. And I think early naughty songs maybe Kudna kind of got that garage influence in there, and it just kind of disappeared 2010 to 2020. And right now it's definitely a resurgence. You're seeing more DJs, across the board. I personally like making my own music on the side. I don't picture it going anywhere, but it's just nice to know that what we came back what we talked about earlier. Just being Southeast Asian doesn't define you.
No.
It's kind of who you are as a person. All your interests kind of make you the person that you are. So it kind of gives me that confidence to I can be sort of hardworking guy working in tech, making music, just being myself and going for it. So yeah, definitely.
I have a guy from Parks and Rec. I don't know if do you know his name? He's from Tamil Nadu.
Aziz Ansari.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah,
he has a show on Netflix as well. I forget the show's name, but it's a really nice show.
Master of None.
That was brilliant. One of the best depictions of Asian parents that I had, or immigrant parents that I saw. That was really good to see.
I love that show.
That was a great show. I think it's I don't have any inspirational Indian people that I look up to, but in music and when I see trends like that, it's super cool. I started being a little bit more into Indian rap and stuff like that. And it's nice to see Malayali rap take in points from the West and integrate that as well. That's been super nice. I've been that kind of influenced me. That's oh man, Kerala is actually super cool, and I've been trying to look for people in there to get inspiration from. That's been nice.
And just to finish off, for anyone wanting to learn a bit more about Asian Heritage Month or Asian culture, what do you think is the best way to do it?
I think we said it before we started, it's just talking to people, speaking to your friends, or even, if you're walking by a Gurudwara, a mosque, a Hindu temple, you can always just pop in, like, everyone's, like, part of the community, we're all just here to, enjoy our lives, so definitely, like, ask questions, be curious, and, like, definitely, like, speak to people. And obviously the internet's your friend as well.
And don't believe everything you see on Bend It Like Beckham.
Yes, definitely.
That's so true. Yeah, I think it's like coming with an accepting like mindset, and that's an open mindset, willing to change misconceptions by like speaking to people and seeing what the real what it actually is like. Like you said, speaking to people is probably the best way to if you have friends who are of like South Asian heritage, just go to them and be like, okay, can I learn a little bit more about your culture? Yeah. I'm sure like 90% of the time they'll be like, yeah, I can't believe you came and asked me this.
Yeah,
sure,
absolutely.
I'm happy to tell you.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, I think we'll wrap things up there, guys. But thank you both so much for joining me, and thank you for everyone who tuned in to listen. See you on the next one.